In the previous parasha, we end where Avram and his father and his wife, they leave Ohr Kasdim, they go to Choron. What's the Ohr Kasdim? The Torah alludes to the fact that Horon, who was one of the sons of Terach, is no longer here, and his son is Lot. And when they left Ohr Kasdim to go to Choron, it was Terach, Avram, Sarai, and Nochor, and his wife, and Lot went. And now they're at Choron. Now Hashem comes to Avram in Choron and says, Lech lecha, me'artzecha, leave this location, go to the location I will show you. What exactly is Ohr Kasdim? So Rashi cites Chazal, Ohr Kasdim is referring to the kill of Kasdim. And what happened in the kill of Kasdim? Avram had destroyed the idols of his father. His father informed on him to Nimrod, who was the king, and he was thrown into the kiln because he would not bow to the idol. He was given a choice: either bow and you will live, or go into the fire and you will die. Avram says, I choose to go into the fire. Miraculously, he came out alive. Horon, the father of Lot, stood by the sidelines, and he said to him that if Avram comes out alive, I am with Avram. And if not, I will bow. If he does not come out alive, I will bow. Avram comes out alive. Nimrod says to Haran, what do you choose? He says, I choose not to bow. He says, you choose not to bow, you're going to be killed. So Haran, the father of Lot, died due to his father. So he died al pnei aviv as a result of what his father had done. Now Lot is an orphan. Why is he an orphan? Because his father died because he would not bow to the idol. Who's the first person in the history of humanity who gave his life not to do idolatry? Haran, Lot's father, was the first human being ever to die al Kiddush Hashem. He would not bow, and he died. He died because he would not bow. Going on record, the first human being in the history of the world to die al Kiddush Hashem is Haran, Lot's father. Avram, his whole life, is only to bring to the forefront that we live for God and we die for God. That's what existence is all about. Even if the challenge is to give your life to show your love for God, you do that. This is b'chol nafshecha. V'avteis Hashem Elokecha b'chol levav v'chol nafshecha. I feel notel nafshecha, even if it's at the cost of your life, you give your life. Now, the question is, when Haran said, if my brother comes out alive, did he say, I will go into the fire? If he said that, it's not much of a challenge. Because, of course, if Avram goes into the fire, comes out of the fire, and you believe that if you don't bow, and the same thing's going to happen to you, so what's the great accomplishment? No great accomplishment. So what I used to say was, it doesn't make a difference. Even though that was the reality, he says, if Avram comes out, I will go in, because he believed he would come out. But nevertheless, ultimately, he died, and he died al Kiddush Hashem. He died because he didn't want to bow. That was his claim to fame. Even though his original calculation was he's coming out, doesn't make a difference. However, if you look at Rashi's language, Rashi doesn't say that he said that if Avram comes out, I will go in because I will come out. He says, if Avram comes out, I am with Avram. That's all he said. He said, I am with Avram. That's Rashi in this previous week's parsha. Meaning, even if it means I will die, I will go in. Avram, for whatever reason, merited to come out. But if he comes out alive, I'm willing to go in, even if it means to die. And he went in, and he did not come out. So therefore, it's more than he just was the first person to die to sanctify Hashem's name. He was willing to meet the challenge that even if he doesn't come out, he's willing to go in. So the way Rashi words it, the Haran's decision to go in was more than if Avram comes out, I will go in to come out. However, from the words of Chazal, it seems to be that Haran believed he would come out. Why? Because the Chazal say that a person who's willing to give his life to sanctify Hashem's name, Hashem will perform a miracle on his behalf. A person who's willing to give his life because he believes Hashem will save him, Hashem will not perform a miracle on behalf of that person. So from that Chazal, it seems to be Haran had believed that he's coming out alive. Even though from Rashi, the way he words it, he says, I am with Avram. But from Chazal, seems to be he believed he was coming out alive. But nevertheless, he was special because he was the first human being to sanctify Hashem's name, not to bow to idolatry. Now, there's an obvious question. Nimrod was the person who introduced idolatry to existence. And Nimrod was the leading power at this point. He says to Avram, and this was a public spectacle, either you bow or you die. He goes and comes out. We know the story of Eliyahu Bar Carmel when he challenged the Nevi Baal, the prophets of the Baal, to refute paganism, idolatry with Achav, and when the fire came down from Shamayim and consumed the korban, and the stones and the pail and everything was just burnt, all the Jews, they prostrated themselves on Har Carmel and they said, Hashem Elokim. So the question is, when Avram came out of the kiln, what should have Nimrod said? Hashem Elokim? Rather than saying Hashem Elokim, what does he say to Haran? Mr. Haran, what do you say? Are you going to bow or are you not going to bow? He says, I will not bow. Then he goes into the kiln. And why did Nimrod not respond as Klal Yisrael responded when the fire came down in Hashemayim and consumed the korban? Basic question. My question is why in Har Carmel the Jews didn't say it's a fluke, but they immediately prostrated themselves and they said Hashem Elokim. And then the Nevi Baal, the prophets of Baal were refuted. Achav's position of idolatry was refuted. It was proven Hashem Elokim. So why Avram coming out of the kiln? Why did the Jews say that it's a fluke? It doesn't confirm that idolatry is baseless. Why? Just to differentiate between what happened with Eliyahu and Navi and over here. That's the question.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the answer is what he said. That's not the question on that was why did Haran should have, due to Avram coming out, Nimrod should have recognized. He said it's a fluke. And what proved it? Haran goes and doesn't come out. You see, it's a fluke.
Right.
Okay? But the question initially, rather than saying to Haran, go in, he should say, I recognize that he's the true God, as the Jews did. Now, the Gemara in Bracha says when Eliyahu, when he brought the korban, when he brought that sacrifice, he said two things. He says, Aneni Hashem Aneni. He prayed, Aneni Hashem Aneni. What's Aneni Hashem Aneni? Aneni, answer me, Hashem, answer me. Aneni sheyered Ishmin Hashemayim. Firstly, he says, respond to me. He was mispalel, let a fire come down from heaven to consume the korban. V'aneni sheyomru ma'asik shofim. And answer me that the Jews should not say that this is attributed to witchcraft, that this is sorcery. I mean, even though it comes down, but the question is, how do you process it? They should see it right. They should see it for what it is. So it's only due to the tefillah of Eliyahu did the Jews see it right. That's why they said Hashem Elokim. Over here, there's no special schus for Nimrod to see it right. All that had to happen, Avram had to come out alive. Nimrod could attribute it to 50,000 things why he came out alive. Avram came out alive. That's it. Why wasn't he impressed? Like Eliyahu had to pray, Aneni Hashem Aneni, that they shouldn't attribute it to kshofim, to kishuv, to or sorcery. Here, Nimrod may have attributed it to sorcery. Avram was able to come out, or for any other reason. And therefore, he wasn't going to change his position in his theological position. So you know what happened? Hamran, what are you doing? He goes in, doesn't come out. So for him, Nimrod says that proves that this thing is some kind of nonsense. This is not reality. Because in reality, why didn't Haran come out? But it doesn't make a difference. Haran factually ended up dying al Kiddush Hashem. And this concept, this reality, allows us to understand many things. Why Avram went to bat for Lot, and he put his life on the line, his spiritual accomplishments, for the sake of Lot, despite the fact that Lot was not a good person. Lot himself was an ingrate. We see from his behavior, the way he behaved with Avram Avinu, Avram should have abandoned him. The answer is Avram owed it to his father, because his father was that special person that his father, factually speaking, he died al Kiddush Hashem. He's the first human being in history to be known that he died not to bow to the idol. That was McIntyre, this person. He writes an article a few months after the 6 Day War. He says, you know, it's very interesting. The 6 Day War, we know, was not a miracle. We know it was a surprise attack, and we know it was due to the Israeli Air Force being the best Air Force in the world. But if after a few hundred years pass and we look back at the events of the 6 Day War, what are they going to say? They can say it's a miracle. He says, today we say that there were 10 plagues in Egypt, the splitting of the sea. And he goes to explain that every one of those actions could be attributed not to miracle, but to physical acts. The sea, the water turned red, there was algae. And he has each one infestation of frogs. And he has a way to it. But he says, since all this time has passed, since we don't understand, what do? We attribute it to miracle, but we know it wasn't a miracle. As we know today, the 6 Day War was not a miracle. But he says, when time passes, to be able to understand what happened, we're going to say miracle, because we don't know the facts. But if we know the facts, we know it's not miracle. There's no such thing as miracle. That's the crux of that article. You understand? So the same thing. If when the miracle takes place, if there's any way to see it differently, if you're immersed and connected to your position, you don't change so quick. You'll attribute it to anything but that. And that was the story with Nimrod. Proof in the pudding, Haran goes in, does not come out. So what does that say? It says clearly, it's not a miracle, because it would have been, if you're on God's side, God brings you out of the fire. So why wasn't Haran brought out of the fire? He should have been saved. We find that when the Jews left Egypt, and then Paro realized that we weren't coming back, it says, Hashem says, travel back towards the enemy. Here we're fleeing. He says, travel back towards the enemy. Travel back towards Baal Tzifon. It says that Hashem destroyed every deity of the Egyptians. He left one in place, intact. Baal Tzifon, the Lord of the North. Why? Because when you travel back, and it seems to be you're confused, Paro will say, Sogar Leim Amidbar. They're locked down in the desert because the deity of Baal Tzifon, who's the deity of Egypt, he has us entrapped, and we can't get out. And then afterwards, they pursue us, and we go straight into the sea. We know that Kriyas Yamsuf was the greatest of all the miracles. There's an argument. How many miracles took place? 50, 200, 250. I mean, such a miraculous event, something that never ever happened before. The Egyptians are chasing us. Don't you think they should have stopped for a moment and said, you know something? Let's stop for a moment and let's evaluate what's going on over here. Seems to me this is God. They didn't stop. They just went straight in. They chased us and pursued us right into the sea. Why did they stop? Because in terms, the same thing. We're talking about a battle of powers. If the Lord of the North is still in place, that means God is not the Almighty, but he's a power. But he's not the all-powerful, because proof of the pudding is the Lord of the North is still in place. So how was the sea split? Like the Jews were locked down in the desert due to their deity, Lahavdil. God is also a power, but he's not the all-powerful. So he split the sea. but it's not to be impressed. They attribute it to something, but he's not the Almighty. He's not the monotheistic God. As a result of that, they're not stopping. They're going right after us. But when the sea came down on them, what did they say? They said, Hashem nilcham b'shvil Yisrael. When afterwards they realized that they were deluded and they were actually fooled, that Hashem only left it in place to destroy them, then they said, Hashem nilcham b'shvil Yisrael. But it was too late. That was the last moment. Before the last words of their life, they said, God is fighting bad for the Jewish people. And that was the end of the story. But until that point, what did they believe? It wasn't Yudke Vovke. The Almighty is fighting on behalf of the Jewish people. A power. It's a power. We also have a power. By the time, as they said, the last nail in the coffin, they realized it's Hashem Nilcham B'Shul Yisrael. So again, they attribute it not to the Almighty, but they attribute it to a power. Same thing. Nimrod is not changing his position. Haran, you go in. What happens? Haran doesn't come out. If Ohr Kasdim was such an important event, it was a miracle, the first miracle that Avram experienced. He went into the kiln, came out of the kiln. Why does the Torah speak about it and explain what it was? It's alluded to. Ohr Kasdim, the kill of Kasdim, what is it? He left the kill of Kasdim. It's alluding, he came out of the kiln. Ohr Kasdim was known, Ohr Kasdim was the community. There was a kiln in Kasdim. But the Torah keeps it under wraps. Why? Question the Ramban asks. So Ramban answers, the Torah, to be able to give us a full appreciation of what went on there, it has to get into the details, to speak about the idolatry and the back and forth. Torah doesn't want to expose us to things which have a representation of what that represents. Idolatry. Therefore, the Torah only alludes to it, but it doesn't actually flesh it out to understand exactly what happened over there. So it's only through Torah Sheba'al Peh, through the oral law, do we know the Ohr Kasdim was this event. But that it should be explicit in the Torah. Torah doesn't want to get into the details because it's not good for us to be exposed to that level of representation, which represents paganism. That's the Ramban. So it's interesting. You know, people, they take certain courses. And I once mentioned this. Many years ago, you know, people take courses in comparative religions when they go to college. They need it for the credit. And they believe and they, you know, talk about observant people. Halachically, it says, Lo sasura achrei levavchem. We say in the third parsha of Kriya Shema, achrei levavchem zu minus. You're not permitted to read or study subject matter which is heresy. You're not permitted to study idolatry. Unless you're in the field that you have to go counter positions of paganism, you're not permitted to read that material. You're not permitted. Why are you reading it? To be more aware, you're not permitted. That's lo sasur achrei levavchem. You can't get involved in something which represents heresy, idolatry. You're not permitted. Torah violation. Now, the question is why, but I'm a fervent, committed Jew. The answer is, you know, the Gemara tells us, based on the Pasuk Tehillim, that the Satan is always lurking to foul us up. He wants Ratzil Hamiso. He wants to kill the tzaddik. Except Hashem always intervenes and protects the tzaddik. Hashem Ma'atzilu Miyodo. You know, we don't even realize, on a subconscious level, we're always looking for an escape clause. What happens if you don't have an escape clause? Then you're forced to accept truth. If a person is confronted with truth and he has no wiggle room, you see it for what it is. But if you have an escape clause and you have an alternative, even though it may be a weak alternative, and you want the escape clause, you go there. You go there. And we're all vulnerable to this. So the less escape clause we have, the more secure we are. Hashem says, Lo surah achrei levavchem. I don't want you to study or get involved in any of the subject matter, heresy, idolatry, anything. Because the moment you know there's something on the other side of the equation, automatically, if you want that escape clause, that is the escape clause. Therefore, Where are we? We're not in the dark. At Sinai, we saw the truth. We saw the truth at Sinai. As Tosas cites a Midrash, Hashem opened heaven and earth and showed us no one exists, no power other than himself. So factually speaking, on record, there's no other power other than Hashem. Over time, things get blurred. But if you go back to the origin of where it all began, it's irrefutable truth because we saw the truth. And Hashem showed us the truth at Sinai. So therefore, it's not God is keeping us in the dark. I don't want you to study that because I want to pull the wool over your eyes. Hashem's not pulling the wool over our eyes. Because at Sinai, he opened up every part of creation to show us nothing exists other than him. So that's fact. We could get all fouled up, thinking maybe not. God says, you know something, I want you to stick, just keep on that straight path. Because the moment you go there, all of a sudden you delude yourself and you think there's something other than what there is. You know, some people say, you know, I want my children to be exposed to certain things. They should know what the world is all about. What do we know what the world is about? Therefore, we have to expose them to things which are negative. There's no reason to know that. If we believe in the Masorah and Sinai was Sinai, and we have this pure tradition, which is truth on an absolute level, because of Sinai, and we believe that, what do you have to show them the other side of the equation? Why? If you have no choice, you're confronted with it as a different story. But to expose yourself or your children to things which are not necessary, that doesn't in any way confirm the truth, because the truth is the truth, because we know what the truth is, based on our Masorah. Always say, you know it. There's a story of Rabbi Salanter. Rabbi Salanter lived in Vilna a number of years. Rabbi Salanter, not only did he found the Musa movement, he was very involved in outreach. At the end of his life, he lived in Paris, Rabbi Salanter, because Paris was in the 1800s, was an assimilated community, and it needed a tremendous amount of effusion of some level of exposure to what it's all about. And he was there. There was a time he was in Germany doing outreach. And Rabbi Salanter, he earned himself a degree in chemistry to be able to be involved in outreach in Germany, because he knew that would somehow give him credibility among German Jews, because every person over there had a PhD. And unless he had that certification, he couldn't actually. For Rabbi Salanter, you realize he probably did it, he read up on it in 24 hours or whatever it is, and he had the degree. So Rabbi Salanter, there was a family, you know, in Europe, there was a thing called gymnasium. Gymnasium was if a person went and had a secular education. And when you had that secular education, you were exposed to things which literally undermined traditional Judaism, undermined Yiddishkeit. And there was a family who originally was exposed to that, and he had a relation with the family, and he brought the family to a level where they understood what it is and what it should be. Okay? Rabbi Shlomo had to go away for a few years from Vilna, comes back, and he visits his family, who was originally, he brought them along to such a degree, and he realizes there was a lot of slippage. Since he's away, they slipped quite a bit. And the father is priding himself. He has a 17-year-old daughter, that the 17-year-old daughter won an award. She's the best violinist and in that whole area, like in this age group in Lithuania. She won an award, and the father's priding himself, telling Rabbi Salanter how proud he is of his daughter. Okay? So Rabbi Salanter says to this young girl, could you give me a sample? I heard, you won the award to be the best violinist. Could you play something for me? So she says, I don't have to prove to you that I'm the best violinist. I have the award, people know. And if you ask me to play for that reason, I don't have to prove myself to you. Pretty arrogant. This is the great rabbi. Rabbi Salanter doesn't say a word. He goes to the father and he says, you told me about your daughter and you're proud that she has this ability, and I asked her to give me a sample. She says to me, she doesn't have to prove himself. She does not prove herself to me because she is. So Reb Shlomo said, the father says, it's true. She doesn't have to prove herself because it's known she is, because factually she is. So Reb Shlomo says to the father, does God have to prove himself to you that he split the sea? Does God have to prove himself that he's the creator of the world? Does God have to prove himself to anything? Who do you think you are? God is God. You don't want to believe, don't believe. You want to walk out the door, walk out the door. Exactly what his daughter said to Rabbi Shlomo, that is what he said to the father. It's all fact. It's proven. It's irrefutable fact. You want to put your head in the sand, put your head in the sand. I'm willing to help you to try to understand why, but if that's the position you take, that your daughter doesn't have to prove himself. If that's the case, God definitely doesn't have to prove himself to you, who he is. And you want to become this acculturated Jew, become the acculturated Jew. Finished. Nimrod attributed it to what? Like Eliyahu had to say, Aneni, the second time, that people shouldn't attribute it to witchcraft. Although Eliyahu, when that fire came down, he knew this wasn't witchcraft. But he was concerned that people may actually process it as that. They should have a siyata d'shmaya to realize it's Hashem, it's not witchcraft. Avram, when he came out of that kiln, he knew he came out of the kiln. It had nothing to do with sorcery. Hashem took him out of that kiln. That's how he knew that. See, personally. Now, Avram now has his marching orders. Avram becomes now, he's the Ivri. Avram is an Ivri. What's Ivri mean? Avram is now ready to take on the world single-handedly. Right? They say, are you out of your mind? You're one person, how do you take on the world? So until this time, it wasn't simple. Hashem allows me that. But if Hashem took him out of that fire, what is Hashem saying to Avram? You're my man. You represent me in existence. There's nothing that you can't succeed. You can take on the world single-handedly because I'm your backer. But only Avram knew that because Avram knew the reason why he came out of the fire was so God took him out of the fire. This is not attributed to witchcraft. The world sees him as a fanatical maniac. When Lot was taken captive by the four kings, it was an entrapment. They felt, as a result of that, they're going to be able to kill Avram and put this to rest. But who was the victor? Avram was the victor. Why? How does Avram go and do such a thing? Because Avram knew exactly who his backer was. It's not witchcraft, it's not anything else but Hashem himself. What do we say every morning in Psukei de Zimra? Ato Hashem Elokim asher hotzeisos Avram mi'Ohr Kasdim. You took Avram out of the kiln of Kasdim, right? V'samt eshmo Avraham, and you've designated him as Avraham. And you found his heart dedicated to you, right? We say it every morning. What's Avraham? Because he went to the kiln, and you took him out of the kiln. V'samt eshmo Avraham. What's Avraham? So in Parshas Bereshis, it says, Bihi Boram. When God created them, the Medrash says, Hi Boram Osis Avraham. The letters of Hi Boram, he created them, and Avram are the same letters. So the Maral explains Chazal that Avram was the beginning of a new creation. When Avram became Avraham, and why did he become Avraham? Because he went into the kiln and came out, and Hashem performed that miracle. Now Hashem is his backer all the way. And as a result of that, he's going to make a difference. He will make his imprint on existence, that Hashem hu Elokim, that Hashem is master. Because Avram is Hiboram. He is the creation. He's the purpose of creation. He's the founding father of Klal Yisrael. That's Avram Avinu.
When Avram